Thank you, Mr. Robertson. It's a great pleasure to participate in this debate under your chairmanship, and I want to particularly thank my right honourable friend, the member for Meriden, and also the honourable member for Slough for securing the debate through the Backbench Business Committee. And I do agree with the honourable member for Slough that it's an unfortunate timetabling error, which I hope that we will not see again next year, and that rightly we should be celebrating the achievement of women in our society, whether it's in the economy or elsewhere, and back in the chamber in 2015. Mr. Robertson, can I also draw to your attention, and perhaps that of the clerk next to you, I was rather disappointed that the library chose not to do a full debate briefing pack on this debate. There was a small contribution, but I was informed this morning that unlike other 90-minute debates that have appeared in this adjournment debates that have happened here, for example, the future of the A303, that had the full works. And while the information on here is very relevant, I felt that we should have had a better briefing from the House of Commons library on this particular matter, and I hope you will use your offices to communicate that too. I wanted to give a little bit of also to welcome the positivity reflected by my honourable friend from Mid-Derbyshire. And I welcome her insight, particularly into international development issues. She will be aware that the 22nd of March is World Water Day, and I've in the past supported charities like WaterAid. And I think one of the things that we must recognise is that the amount of the international development work to which she referred to through charities, but also with direct aid, and also the previous initiatives of the former Prime Ministers about getting children and girls in particular to go to school and enabling that to happen, is something that we should be proud of as British members of Parliament in trying to make that happen all around the world. It just happens in this country. I wanted to talk more about the contribution to the economy, and as my honourable friend from Mid-Derbyshire suggested, I do intend to talk about the executive pipeline of talent. I thought I'd start off a little bit with my own inspiration on why I decided to go into business. And Mr. Robertson, both my parents are teachers, and I didn't have much experience of the private sector world as a child growing up. And then my granny had actually worked in the private sector, which was kind of news to me. She started off her career with matchboxes at Bryant and May, but she ended up working for a company called Dista, which is part of the Eli Lilly group. And when I was showing an interest in chemistry and all that, she used to show, she was involved in packing, so I'm not going to pretend she was on the executive board or anything like that. But she started showing me some of the information that used to be sent to all the pensioners by Eli Lilly, and that got me more and more interested in the business side of life. And it was while I was doing my PhD that I was very lucky to host Helen Sharman, the first British astronaut, to speak at University College London when she was talking about her role in doing that. And she was a chemistry graduate. That's the reason she came to UCL to speak to us. And she worked for a company called Mars, which the Honourable Lady for Slough will know very well. And Helen Sharman was a chemist, and she was worked at Mars, and of course she'd spent time going off doing there, and consequently now does a lot of work in that regard, highlighting the importance of science and engineering. But I found that a really inspirational woman working in this international business, and it is one of the reasons I applied to join Mars. I also, during my PhD, went off on a business school. At the time, EPSRC used to run these business weeks where everybody on a government-funded PhD would go to different parts of the country, meeting new people, but more importantly, doing things like business games with all sorts of companies. And again, a lady who also worked for Mars, a lady called Ingrid Uden, I found her inspirational. And when I had met two ladies from Mars, that was the only company I wanted to work for. And indeed, I was successful there. And through various bits of careers, I've Miss Elisa up and down. My last role working for Mars was as finance director of one of their UK subsidiaries. And what I will say is that an unusual company, but another thing that struck me when I was there, which may not have been particularly well known to most employees at Mars, or associates as they're known, is that the Mars board had as one of their objectives, or one of their key measures, was the number of women at a certain role, a certain zone and above, recognising their desire to ensure that there are women well represented in the pipeline of talent to potentially become the future board directors of Mars at a management level. So moving on then to, of course.
No, the present chief executive of Mars in Slough is a woman, which is rare in a manufacturing company of that size.
It is, and I know Fiona Dawson very well, and she's an inspirational lady. And if there are people interested in getting involved in business, she's a very busy lady as well, but I know that she is an inspiration to many to show that running a leading manufacturing and retail business is a very exciting career, one that's taken her to different parts of the world, but is particularly good at leading in the UK. But this then leads me on, Mr. Robertson, to talk further about the Pipeline of Talent report that I was very pleased to co-author with my honourable friend, the member for Brentford and Isleworth, who, due to her position in supporting the government, can't contribute today. But I want to place on record my thanks to her and to everybody who participated in the evidence gathering sessions, the witnesses who came forward. And I will put on record my thanks to my researcher, Edward Winfield, who is leaving next week to go and get a job in industry. But he certainly pulled together, I think, a really good report. I think rather than going through all the inputs of the report, I think it's worth focusing on the executive summary, and if any honourable members don't have a copy of the report, I'd be happy to circulate it to it. But we started off with a quotation from my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, where he said just over 2 years ago, "If we fail to unlock the potential of women in the labour market, we're not only failing those individuals, we're failing our whole economy." And I think that is right to get that kind of emphasis, that there is a more important role that women can and should play, if they wish, to help towards the contribution, economic contribution in this country. My honourable friend from Mid-Derbyshire has already referred to the increase in the number of people going on boards, and the honourable member for Slough was very accurate in saying we should not just focus on non-executive directors. And in order to get more executive directors, you need to focus on the executive pipeline of talent. So just running through, we came up with a series of recommendations, partly on the basis that anybody who works in business knows if you don't measure something, it won't get done. And so some concrete suggestions that we made to, recommendations we made to companies, headhunters, and seeking the views of investors, but also to women themselves and indeed to government. Now, in terms of women themselves, we should be actively seeking out both mentors and sponsors. They are different roles, and everybody needs a champion at the top board in order to do that. And I think that's some of the, sometimes we shouldn't be too shy about asking for help. I think one of the interesting insights that we had is that often when people were offered coaching, some women saw that as a bit of an insult and a reflection that they were not performing well, as opposed to seeing it as a really important tool in order to help improve their own performance and attainment. And I can honestly say today that I'm sure as a Member of Parliament, one of the things I have not been investing in, but should do that in myself, is to get that element of coaching. Because I can honestly say it is one of the most best tools that any successful person can achieve. I think also can use in order to achieve. I think the other recommendations we make is that one of the things that is noticeable about women in businesses currently is those that have risen to the top often focus on one particular discipline, whether that's in HR, marketing, or finance. And certainly some of the recommendations coming back to us from the expert witnesses was that taking on responsibility for profit and loss, managing budgets, managing programs, and indeed being prepared to take on an international role early on in your career was an important part of the toolkit in order to have that wider business experience suitable for being considered to be promoted within your company, or indeed to be poached to go elsewhere and eventually make it to the board. To seek stretch assignments. I think that was absolutely true as well. I don't know of any successful woman who stays in their comfort zone. That is exactly the same words I could use for any successful man. And I think it's always about seeking to be extraordinary in order to go up that pipeline. of talent, up the ladder of promotion. In terms of we recognise that people should use and use networks to increase their spheres of influence, and perhaps a little bit of a personal